Ooh, that's a good question. I'm a lifelong Kansas City resident, and I like to explore and be a tourist in my own city. I did grow up in Wyandotte, but then right before high school, I moved to the suburbs north of the river. So I've kind of lived on both sides in all parts of the city. I went to a ghost town, just Oklahoma, the northeast corner of it's only like 2.5 hours from here. So everything is just kind of within an hour or two that I've explored so far around this region. It's just the locality of it and the fact that Oklahoma and Kansas is just a whole lot of vast openness where a lot has been just left. Sometimes I do, but I do have a prepared statement for that. So, like in 1991, Anderson Cooper forged a press pass to get into Myanmar, therefore making him the world's top war correspondent to this day. So sometimes you kind of got to bend the rules a little bit to get where you're going. It all started in a ghost town in Oklahoma, and I went down there just as a curious person, and there was so much more than just empty buildings. There was like stories behind it, and it's like I've always kind of after that, just when driving by places, it's like, oh, I wonder what that story is. I wonder what happened here. Who lived there? Things like that. So it just kind of was more of a curiosity, wanting to know about the place that is now left empty. Ooh, that's a good one. I didn't realize it till later. I didn't, at first, I was just showing, hey, this is what's left. This is what's here today. But then as I started researching places, I found these very interesting little lesser known history stories of like, okay, Wheatley Provident is a place down in 18th and Vine, and people will just tell you, oh, it's the first black hospital, which it was, but it also was the first in the nation to have a pediatric ward. And when I say nation, I mean like early 1900s. But they were the first to have a pediatric ward starting pediatric care across the nation, actually. So pediatric care started with black nurses in Kansas City, but a lot of people just see an old stone building that homeless people sleep in. There's a few connections. There are places that I've been to where I've actually enjoyed it when it was a place like Rosedale Ridge apartments for a perfect example. Like back in God, like 85, 86, I had friends in grade school and they lived there and we played in the courtyard. We'd run through the halls, hide and seeking through friends. So there are some places that do have a connection. Yes, I actually do try to go back as often as I can because I love progression photos. If I can get it when it's fairly abandoned, like newly abandoned, there's not a whole lot of decay, not a whole lot of vandalism and destruction, and I like to go back. I try to give it a few months, that way, there's a chance for like foliage to grow or I guess people to destroy it, but I try to go back as often as I can, and I do like to end a story with demolition photos if I can. Okay, so I went there and just got, of course, outside shots first, but it was like my second or third visit there where the side door was just left wide open. So it's like, hey, it's an open invite. And just went in there and checked it out. We didn't go too far in because it's very collapsed. And then in March of 2020, someone set it on fire. It wasn't electrical because there hadn't been electricity there since 1992. So when I was there, the police chief, the fire chief, and I had a talk, and I was like, "Well, I've been in there and got pictures," and he asked for those photos to be part of the investigation, but that was right at the beginning of COVID when nobody was talking to anybody. They have a lot of violence in that neighborhood, so a lot of people were scared at the time. So I'm fortunate that I got to get in there and get what I get before it was gone for good. That one I found, a friend of mine told me about it because she used to go there before the YMCA in the local area opened up. But researching that was very interesting. There was like some discrepancies about like the historian of Wyandotte County and what I found out, because they said that it closed at a certain time point of like 85, 86, something like that. But then the Facebook page for the club had people posting like their IDs for later times after that still. So that was a nice little jump into relying on social media and people's memories to help me through that one. But you won't even know it's there because it's just so encompassed by trees that you look like you're just driving by a patch of trees. I like to do kind of the basic documentary shots of, just here's the room, here's the hallway, but then after I get what I feel is the whole feel of the room or place, then I like to do some more kind of artsy shots and stuff like that. But I want to get everything. I've had a friend of mine tell me, he's like, sometimes you should hold back. And it's like, no, I can't hold back. If we're going to be telling this story, you got to have all the details. Honestly, I use my iPhone. I use my iPhone for my pictures, my editing, and I have just different lights that I take with me for when I don't have natural light. I started off with the 6S Plus and then moved to the XR, and now I'm at a 13 Max Pro. It's kind of like asking what's your favorite kid? They both, have a purpose. Of course, the before is to show you it in all its glory and when it was operational and things like that. And then the closed just goes to show that what people just leave behind. Well, they'll close a door and just leave there and think that it'll be taken care of or something. It's a very much common practice to see so much left behind in buildings. I like to think that these pictures kind of immortalize the past when I can get it through all its stages. I actually have a lot of people that chime in on my page. They're like, oh my God, I went to school there. I can't believe it looks like that now. And I get a lot of people that tell me that my pictures are very sad because of how just things are left neglected. Once they're done kind of using it up, it's like, okay, we're done and we're going to move on, and they do. I do try to do that. I'll, kind of do the drive-by, the recon work, look at it, kind of get a lay for the neighborhood. I do like to know a little bit about the building, like if it was a school or church. But yeah, I do some recon work before I go in. Both. In quite a few of my places, especially like my eastern Kansas stuff, those like small towns and one-room schoolhouses in the middle of nowhere, they're like nowhere on the internet except for maybe just a picture. So I had to actually like contact these counties' historical societies, which only operate like 2 days a week for like 3 hours each. But everybody was so nice, and they would tell like the history based off like these books, and they'd like take a picture of the book and send it over to me. So there was a lot of just personal one-on-one talking with people. And then like with the Knickerbocker, that one was a lot of interviews that I did with like the former neighborhood president. But there is a lot of, if it is on the internet and it's a registered historical document, that's all there, multiple pages for me already. Sometimes when it's like in a city and it's an older building, yes, I feel like I can get a lot more information because 9 times out of 10 they are registered historical buildings. So there's like forms that can be hundreds of pages of just information describing the history, the architecture, what the building's made of, the purpose. All of that is in there. Even photos of what it looked like the day it closed, because there are people that are working with the form people to take pictures so they can make a complete story of the written word and what it looked like. Oh man, there's so much in Kansas City. Rosedale Ridge has kind of been one that's really stuck with me for the fact that it was one of my very first early places, and it's something that I did have a personal connection to, knew a lot of people who lived there, and then what happened there is just was so crazy, how an organization or a business could allow this to happen to so many people. Because what happened was the city basically stepped in after so many complaints, and they told everybody, you have like 15 days to get out, because there was mice, roaches, bed bugs, and black mold infestations. And it's like, how does something get like that? Or, how does so many people complain about something and nothing ever gets done until it is a dangerous point? Personal memories, and then just the whole, so many people dropping the ball for these residents. And then these residents had to, by force, like find new places to live, because where they were just wasn't good anymore. After everybody like moved out, which was good for some people, because a few months after everybody had vacated the premises, there was a gas leak in one of the buildings that blew off like the front of the building. So this was just a snowball that got out of control, and I think there are many people to blame for that. That one just started out as a place I went. A friend took me there. We, of course, did our pictures there. It wasn't, and I had went through 2 Kansas City books before I even actually thought of writing about it. But then when I started writing about it, I learned so much just about the neighborhood that surrounds the nursing home itself. Story isn't all that great, because it was just a nursing home that was part of a hospital/college campus. But learning about the neighborhood in which it sat, that one was very interesting, because as we all know, Kansas was a free state for slaves back in the day. So that neighborhood became an established black neighborhood from slaves escaping from Missouri into Kansas, right in that neighborhood, and then establishing a black college there, and eventually into a nursing home. It wasn't just for black people, the nursing home, it was just a nursing home, but there was so much that built up to the nursing home. And that nursing home was just the last of it. It had all been like demolished over the years, like through the 70s and stuff. The lab, that is down in like the Kansas side of the Bottoms, but when I first heard about it, it was just always referred to as the lab. Then as I got more and more into it and started looking more into it, it was like a slaughterhouse at one time. And I looked, there's a sign that's rusted, and I wish I would have like had that handy, but after it got done being a slaughterhouse, it then became a factory for industrial lubes and hydraulic fluid. So slaughterhouse to lube. And that building, the last time I went by it, it was somebody had cinder blocked up everything on the ground floor except for one door. It's like very collapsed, and I'm surprised it hasn't fallen in at this point, but I don't think there's going to be any return, because cinder block's a little harder to get through than a board. Since I started this, a lot of them have just been demolished, and it's just land. There's been quite a few, especially when it comes to schools, that have been turned into either senior living or affordable living, which is nice. Like, I never got in there before, but like Blinum School over off of the Troost area, it is now apartment living. With the uprise of Kansas City's population, even more now. Almost every building, I have like 6 or 7 on the chopping block now, and it's all apartment living or condos or lofts. There's some areas where they're putting this living, and people who live in that neighborhood aren't going to be able to afford that kind of living. But that's kind of happening all over. You have to make 3 times the rent to live in these places. So if it's like 2,000, you're talking like six. You better be pulling in like a good $6,000 a month just to live in that area. And like there's a lot of that going on in like the 18th and Vine area where they're building these $1,800 a month townhomes, and it's like, what about the people of this neighborhood? I have ran into other explorers and they're just doing their thing, but I encounter quite a bit of homeless people. Homeless people, especially when it starts getting colder, they stay in these buildings. And of course, everyone that I've encountered so far has just been super nice, and we kind of, respect each other's space. It's like, okay, well, we're going to go over here, leave you guys alone. We'll be, and they're like, cool. So there have been multiple encounters with homeless people, but it's all been positive. They're just trying to find a safe, dry place to put their head. Oh my gosh. I'll have to say I see quite a bit of that, and it's irritating when you see like a really beautiful piece of art that somebody put like some real time and money into, and somebody just puts a big old peen over it. I see lots and lots of penises, more penises than pentagrams, but there is cussing and all kinds of vulgarities, many times very funny. Uh, I actually love taking pictures of it because it's like, look at this. The last one I found was somebody wrote really big on the wall, I love the Steve Miller Band, and it's like, don't we all? And it's really discouraging when someone actually, because like, I've made friends with a couple of graffiti artists, and a lot of people think that, oh, you can just go to Walmart and get the $3 can, and you can, but that doesn't give you the crisp, concise lines that a lot of these artists use. And I've learned like when they, like the graffiti, like the spray cans, you're talking that's like 15-20 bucks for like the good kind with like real nice nozzles on them that they use. And somebody put like quite a bit of money into that. You think about like 6-7 different colors at 20 bucks a piece. Somebody put something into that, and then somebody just comes along and here's this gold dick and ball. Like, why? Okay, so this wasn't in a Kansas location, but we ended up getting in this building with the owner's permission, and the person who owned it before the person that gave us permission was a hoarder. So there were like all kinds of like, this was a 6-story building, and like some of the rooms were just full of like mirrors. And then there was one room that was full of boxes of folded caps and gowns. Then there was like, we found throughout the building mannequin butts, like just the to the stomach to like just the top of the legs, but these mannequin butts like they were gonna sell underwear, or but I kind of wondered, it's like, were these for underwear? But this was a hospital before, and then before it was a regular hospital, it was a hospital for hemorrhoids. So could these mannequin butts be something from the hemorrhoid hospital? But there was just so much time between the hemorrhoid hospital and me finding the mannequin butts that I think this lady just had these mannequin butts. Yes, mannequin butts. Uh, the Woodlands was really interesting, and just how the buildings themselves had been nicely maintained. Of course, they had security, but like walking on the horse track, it was like I was just walking in the grass. And it's like time did stand still there. And trees grew in the middle of that time standing still in some of the buildings. Because, like, I took pictures through the windows. They didn't say I couldn't do that. The Woodlands was fun, but I was very watched and very limited on my time. It's cheaper and easier to walk away when, like, I've been in multiple schools where like just so many things have been left, from like the dishes in the cafeteria to like books and on the shelves in the classrooms, and it's hard to I don't think it's hard. It's just when you're trying to, I guess, close up business and save yourself as much money as you can. Nobody wants to take time in disposal, recycling, the cleanup crew that's going to go into it. If they get into it and find out there's asbestos, then that's a whole other ball game. So sometimes my personal opinion, I think it's just easier for them to close the door and call it a day, because eventually it's going to collapse, they'll tear it down, and they're just on the hook for that. Oh, yes. A lot of these, like specifically like the Woodlands, when they do have security and it's been maintained and secured and boarded up good, it can still be reused. Like a lot of these schools have been turned into like living spaces, and unfortunately, like the Woodlands was demolished, but the land itself was preserved, and they've made that into Amazon space now. But I do believe before too much damage is done, there is value for repurposing. But then after some point, when you have floors collapsing into the third floor collapsing into the second one, yeah, that can be fixed, but how much money do you want to put into it before, it's like it's just cheaper to tear it down. And that was something I kind of had a little personal connection to. After I posted those pictures, I had a couple like personal friends. They're like, "Oh my God, I went to elementary school there," and just the history of it being, a school that started out as one little classroom. The next location, it became a 4 classroom little school, and it was just a story of that neighborhood's growth, of how they had to move to, it was like 3 locations before it is what it is now. And that's just a testament of that neighborhood's growth. And it was interesting to get in there. It is a small school, even for the growth of that neighborhood, but it was an interesting little place. The original 4 room schoolhouse is in the middle school, and the middle school built around that 4 rooms. It's just a short word for urban explorer, urban exploration, just urbexing. I had been urbexing for a couple of years, and I was just happy, going places, taking pictures, writing about it on my page and stuff like that. And I got an email about, hey, we're starting to do this book series of abandoned places. We'd like you to apply. And they sent me like some promotional literature, and it's like I wanted to make sure it's not a scam. So like the people in the pictures, I like found them and contacted them. It's like, is this legit? And they were like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I applied for each book that I've done with. I had to write the back of the book, the about the author, and send in some sample photos. And I guess they liked what they saw and decided to publish me. But I had been like 2 years into this at that point when it happened. And I'm glad that I got to do a book, because it has a far reacher spread than just say like my Facebook page, because there's a lot of people out there that don't have Facebook but are still kind of interested in this thing or some local history, and they can use those books now. I'm kind of a urbexer historian, I guess. Like you can do like a slash on that, because at first it was just urbexing. It was just exploring these urban abandoned places, and then once it's like, oh, there's like stories here, it became about finding out about the history. And then when the books came along, it's like, well, we can preserve this history as opposed to just putting it on a certain page. Now it can be a page and a book and a reference manual. So far, not that I'm aware of. Like, once again, like the Woodlands, I kind of had to sit on those because they wanted to make sure when those went public that it would draw attention to the place, and they wanted it already gone. That way, nobody could cause any damage to it, because being an urbexer, there are people in the community that follow just to, find places to go to party. There are scrappers like people who do scrap iron and stuff that will go in there and just tear these places apart. Okay, so I did a place downtown, a very large building. I had heard rumors before we went into it that a lot of scrappers were in this building and somebody got hurt over, just I guess territory. So whether that was rumor or not, it was still in the back of my mind. But we get in there, we're on the fifth floor. You can hear people banging metal everywhere in this building. Then we actually see a scrapper who's kind of off to the side. My friend's like, hey. And we look over and there he is. And he's like, I'm cool. But he goes, there are other people in this building, all over this building. And I didn't feel safe. So we had to save the other 15 floors for another day. We got out of there. Then I found out, like, after the fact, that security did go in there and like clear that building, and there was a lot of scrappers in there. So I guess that one was a whole safety issue. Yeah, when I just get that gut feeling and there's just something not right, we gotta go. I did this one town in Oklahoma, and that whole town, it was Meridian, and it just gave off a weird vibe. Like, after taking a couple pictures and seeing some wild dogs and a guy in a trash heap, it's like, we should probably go. There's a reason why this town is so off the beaten path. I have never personally seen anything, but I've had feelings. Like, you kind of just get in a place and it's like, wow, this is really sad. I did, okay, the Colored Cemetery in Dunlap, Kansas. Once I got there, like, I thought, oh, the cemetery, it's historic, it's kind of out of town. It was really out of town, and it was like the white cemetery was out of town, but this colored one, I hate that term, but the African American cemetery was even farther outside of town. And when you get there, it was so sad. It was just seeing that these people couldn't even get a headstone, even after death. It's like they couldn't even get the respect of a name. And that's probably one of the saddest places I've been, because it just kind of seems for the most part that it was forgotten for so long. And Black people were essential in the history and establishment of the town of Dunlap. And they couldn't even get the same courtesy as their white neighbors. Oh, that's easy. With urban, there's the decay is man-made. It's graffiti, broken windows, kicked-in sheetrock, all that kind of stuff. But when you're out in the country, you don't see, like, if you see one graffiti piece, it's shocking, because it's like, wow, somebody was out here like graffitiing out in this house in the middle of Kansas. But the difference is when it's out in the country, uh, it's natural takeover. The trees, everything around it just kind of starts to reclaim it. Like, I did this one schoolhouse out in the middle of Kansas, and had it not been fall, I would have never seen it, because the trees were just so encompassing around it that in the fall, when there was no leaves and stuff, it's like, oh, there's this schoolhouse kind of up on the hill in these trees. And nature will just weather a place, take it over, break it down, and it becomes ground again. Oh, yes. Open door, it's an open invite. And yeah, I just walk through, I take my pictures, kind of just check it out, and then I leave as quietly as I came. Why add to the damage? I have a couple friends that hooked me up with a couple locations. There's a lot of internet research, some YouTube stuff. You can just type in certain key phrases to find, videos, if there are videos in that area. A lot of GPS satellite imaging, like just kind of looking at maps from up above. And so it's kind of a combination of some people, some internet, some searching, and some driving around, because there's been a few places where we were on our way from this town to this town and we found some surprise stuff on back roads on the way there, which I love, those little hidden surprises. Oh, that one school in Cedar Point. It looks impeccable from the front. Like, oh, it's just a closed school. And then the gym itself was perfectly maintained except for like this layer of dust all over the whole floor. Like nobody had been there. Trophies were still in the trophy case with ribbons and everything. But then when you got to the school part, like that was seriously collapsed. We couldn't even go in. It was so collapsed in. But it's weird to see just this perfectly preserved shell and this other part of the building that's still just in cherry condition. And that had been collapsed. Oh man, it had been at least a decade that had been collapsed in. But it was a cute little school, and I thought the trophies in the trophy case was, it's like, wow, nobody's touched this. That's really nice. Like I even opened the case because like I wanted to get a picture of the trophies without the glare of the glass. I opened the case and like took a couple pictures and closed. Everything was just kind of left open, which I guess when you always hear those stories about people who live kind of out in the country, out in the middle of nowhere. Oh, we never lock our doors. Yeah, that's kind of a true thing. And if the front door's locked, the back door is usually unlocked. That was interesting, and I found that one through GPS. But I was just kind of researching some places, and I saw on GPS just the little kind of concrete towers, like a grain silo and stuff, and it was just the four of them on the side of the road. I start looking in the trees and zooming in, and with Google Earth, you can like measure the distance. And this factory, like the stone remnants of it, went back 330 yards. That's 3 football fields of this concrete factory hidden in the woods in Mildred, Kansas. But it was called the Great Western Portland Cement Company, and it was actually the cement company that poured the cement for the Liberty Memorial. And it ended up closing down because just cement wasn't what I guess was needed at that time. And eventually it closed and just kind of faded away into the trees. And once again, I'm glad it was November when we did that, because the silos themselves are right there on the side of the road, so you can just park and walk right up to that. But like the rest of it is just in this dense forest that luckily was wintertime, and just it went on and on and on. But had the it been like springtime, we would have never gotten through it because it, even in the winter, was so thick. I came out of there like kind of my pants were torn up and I was bleeding because there's like thorn bushes, like thorns out there, and it's like, oh my god. So that was fun. I had fun researching that because that town of Mildred was pretty much established because of the cement factory, and the owner of the cement factory had a daughter, and there was like controversy about how the town got its name and was it really named after her. And she ended up this is another little side story, but once the factory opened, she ended up getting a tour there and lost a gold watch that was never found there, which was kind of interesting. It's like it's probably not there, wouldn't be there. If it was, it'd be covered under like decades of dirt and foliage. That was one of those where I actually had to contact the Historical Society to find anything. It started on social media. Somebody, I had posted it on my page, and somebody was like, oh my God, is that District 81 outside Osage City? And I was like, yeah, it is. And she goes, my aunt went there. And so it kind of started with her telling me, the whole District 81. And then when researching with each of these counties' historical societies, I came to find out that each schoolhouse was its own district. And at one time, there were 9,000 one-room schoolhouses all across the state of Kansas. And of course, as bigger cities got bigger and schools got bigger, a lot of those schoolhouses closed, and there's only like under 500 of them to this day now. But that one was a neat little school. I was just going from one place to another, and there was this cute little schoolhouse, which led me on a goose chase from social media to the historical society, them sending me all the information, what they had about it. I like a good day trip, but like my Kansas, my Oklahoma, going to St. Louis, those were like, I took good 3, 4 days to, and I make myself my little maps, and I always over plan. When I did my Kansas road trip, I had like 35 places mapped out. I only made it to like 23, which was still good, but I do like to plan. The more time I can get, the better. That way I don't feel rushed. We can, go from one place to another, maybe kind of deviate off the plan and go down a different back road, which that's always fun. Don't go alone. Always make sure you have a buddy. Have a good mask, like something for mold, a good painter's mask, because a lot of these places do have asbestos and black mold in them. Take good lighting, because a lot of places do offer natural light, but then when you get into a place that's boarded up on like all 3 floors, you're working in nothing but the dark. Before you take your picture, you take a breath, make sure you're focused and clear, because you may never get another chance to go back. I've had many places where it's like, oh, well, this picture didn't turn out, but I'll go back in a couple months, and I get there and it's gone. And yeah, sometimes there are no return trips, so get it while you can. When it comes to just urbexers that do the photography and do the exploring and post that stuff, even if they don't write about it, it's still like immortalizing a part of our city that is potentially going to be gone in the future. Most of the places I've gone, I've had, since I've been doing this, nearly 40 places that have all just been demolished and made way for what's ever going to be bigger and better for the city. But I feel like all of us are, doing some kind of preservation of what our city is, was, will be.